welcome and welcome you all. So we see a lot of good, solid comms coming through our systems, and just some little bits, some hints and tips, hopefully to help you maximize those a little bit. We will be sharing this webinar at the end on video, and if you've got any questions or queries at all, please feel free to ask. I'll try and keep an eye on the Q&A section. If any pop up in particular, I'll touch over those. But let's crack on with the webinar. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the challenge that we all face as internal comms professionals, and that challenge is our target audience. They are suffering from what I call consumption overload. They are getting a lot of messages, up to 100 emails a day, and you communicate with a lot of people. You communicate with thousands of employees and staff up and down the country. You're the largest employer in the UK by some margin. Those people that you're getting in touch with, people that you're trying to communicate with, they have a problem. Say about 20 years ago, we all had an attention span of roughly 12 seconds. That's now dropped over the course of the year. Over the course of the years, down to about 8 seconds. And the biggest primary culprit of that are these things. It's the mobile phone. We can't avoid them. They're here in our everyday lives. As a consequence, seeing as goldfish have attention spans of 9 seconds, we are now all officially dumber than goldfish, which is a bit of a shame. But they don't have a mobile phone, so that's their excuse. There are distractions everywhere thanks to these devices. There are messages, there are Teams, there are WhatsApps, there are texts, there are other emails, there are breaks in Wi-Fi. All of these things are challenges that we have to overcome when it comes to communicating with our poor staff who are bombarded with information on a regular basis. So our challenge is to make sure that the internal comms that we create are not just comms, not just push pieces of information, but they're actually engaging. And engaging internal comms is slightly different from internal comms. I'm always reminded of the saying for internal comms when Jack Kennedy visited NASA back in the 60s, and he saw a janitor who was mopping the floor, and he walked over to him and said, "Hi, I'm Jack Kennedy. What are you doing?" And the janitor said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." That's an exemplary example of employee engagement. He wasn't just mopping floors. He was going to get a man on the moon, and he knew his part, and he knew the part he had to play in that. And it's my favorite sort of story for employee engagement. So the first thing that we can look at is, are we pitching our communications at the right level? So we're looking at 4 sort of areas that are quite key for me. Predominantly, I used to be in retail communications before I moved into internal comms, and the big message for me still stands true, that you're writing for people from people. And I know it can be tricky sometimes for you guys, where you're having to send email comms from team email addresses, internal comms at nhstrust.net sort of thing. But it is nice to try and avoid generic email addresses if you can. If you can't, then it's very important that you're using the correct from name, and using a from name of a real person. In retail, if you're getting an email from, say, lastminute.com or Late Rooms or something like that, it's always Poppy at or Jessica at Late Rooms and Last Minute. Even though, yes, it's coming from a comms team, but they're trying to pitch the email from a real person to a real person. We're also looking to use the language of our recipients. It's easy to lapse into our own language vocabulary, or language that the board and the chief execs want you to use. A prime example is the term internal communications. Whilst we are sending internal communications, that phrase can mean little or nothing to our end readers. So we want to make sure that we're using their vernacular in respect of the campaigns. And a big one for me is using the Johnson box. Johnson box being that little bit at the top of your emails, which traditionally has click here to view online, but that's a bit of a waste for me. We can put so much more information into that particular area, and it's really important that we do, because it has a massive impact on our engagement, and it's so simple to do. It gets us past what I call the second filter, and I've already shown you it once. It's this This is our second filter. When we get up in the morning, or when we're not at work, we're walking down the street, we're looking at our phone and we're looking at our inbox and we're going, no, 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 and we're swiping the emails away and they're gone forever. No one's ever read them. No one's even looked at the content. No one's even looked at the copy. No one's even looked at the images. No one's even clicked on a link. They're basing their decision on the second filter, and they're basing their decision on 3 key areas. They're basing it on the subject line, the from name, and the preview text, because at that point, that's all they can see. So they're really, really important to get right. And if you want to get your email opened and read and clicked, these are the 3 key areas that you need to look at and pay most attention to when you're putting together your campaigns. We can see an example here, Poppy at the NHS Trust, subject line, did you see the last email update? It's questioning, it's inquisitive. And then the Johnson box is filling in some more sort of information. So we can see, we've made some big changes about your email comms recently that you need to know about. It's not just the traditional click here to view online. You're not wasting that very, very, very important space on the campaign. You're taking advantage of some of these key sort of areas. And if you add these up, so a from name and a subject line, it's like 76%. You're increasing your chance of an open rate by 76% if you've got those 2 things right. That's a 3 in 4 chance of having your emails opened, or more importantly, not having your emails deleted before they've even hit the inbox. So we've managed to get our emails past the second filter. They're now sat in the inbox, waiting for our recipient to read. So how can we improve the format of our emails? Now, you are all victims of good email formatting. You're all at this webinar because we've sent you an email about this webinar. And we have told you all of the key elements. We've told you the who, the why, the what, the when, the how it's going to happen. We've made it very, very easy to digest, well spaced out. We've used imagery at the email to make it stand out. They say 42% of emails get more clicks when images are used on there. Now, I appreciate that might be difficult for people in the NHS who don't have access to repository libraries, but there's plenty of royalty-free websites, things like pexels.com and pixabay.com, where you can pick up free images. There's a free image on this email here that you can see on this slide. We also then used brand and banner. We made sure that we used NHS Blue in those links. So it felt very comfortable and confident for you to be happy that it's the right sort of thing. It's very, very targeted. We're only sending this out to relevant people in our database to attend these seminars. So we're using all of these tricks and all of these techniques to improve the format of our emails. And like I said, you are victims. It works. You are here watching this webinar because of the things that we did when we were formatting this particular email correctly. The next thing that we can do is we're looking at how regular we send our emails. Now, we've all got email calendars. We all have to adhere to those when it comes to sending out health and safety and official updates and things like that. But calendars do fall into the trap of eventually becoming a little bit passive. If your database knows they're going to get an email at 4 o'clock on a Friday, it becomes a bit old hat. It can sometimes become a little bit stale. So it's an idea sometimes to break it up and send those emails at different times of the day. Send different sort of messages and be honest with the database. Tell them exactly why you're doing it and why this email should be opened more than the other 100 or so that they're getting in there. Why do we say that? Why do I say that an email calendar can be counterproductive? What evidence do I have to say that it doesn't work? Well, when we're looking at campaigns we send for some of our clients, we have our reporting area here, and we can see an engagement heat map. Now, I know for a fact that this email goes out around about this sort of time. It's going out after 4 p.m. on a Friday, and it's getting some good open rates. It's getting some good engagement here, but it's also getting some good engagement here on Monday morning. But what's most important about this email is that there's not a single square on this heat map, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, somebody is opening and clicking on this email at some point in time. There are people opening this email at 9 o'clock on a Saturday. There are some people opening this email at 2 a.m. on a Friday. There's no point where you can say to yourself, well, you know, I can't send a campaign at that time because of X. Thanks to these, we're now in constant contact with all of our data at any given time. Now that always raises a question at me with my 20 years in the game. They always come to me and say, Darren, when should I send my email? When is the exact time I should send my email to get the maximum engagement rate and the maximum click-through rate for my particular campaign? Now, I only have one answer for that. I have no idea. I don't know. Thanks to these again, there's no idea as to when you should send your email campaign or when to get the maximum engagement for a particular database size. The DMA back in the day, back in the early 2000s, would say you should send your email on Tuesday or Thursday at 11 or 2, which was great advice. The only downside is that everybody took it. And so everybody was sending their emails at Tuesday or Thursday at 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And it just meant that the inboxes were heaving. We have a client with Network Rail who always sends a national comms on Friday at 12 o'clock, which means the rest of the teams in their franchises and the rest of the group shouldn't really send their emails at that time because there'd be too much emails going out at that particular time. The rest of it is because of these mobile phones that we dealt with that are massive parts of our lives. We're never switched off. We're reading our emails at the weekends. We're reading our emails when we're on holiday. We're reading our emails when we're in bed. We're reading our emails when we're in the bathroom. I'm being polite there. We're reading their emails when we're on the toilet. So there's no actual good day or time that you should be sending your emails. What you should be doing is using the metrics that you have available to you so let your database tell you when is the good time to send your emails. They will tell you through the metrics when they are reading and when they are looking at those emails using things like heat maps to be able to identify when that time is. It's much better than asking someone like me who really doesn't know anymore. Anybody tells you they do know is lying. The importance of relevancy. Relevancy can be broken into two sort of categories for me. We're looking at the relevancy of the message and we're looking at the segmentation of your audience because that is the key metric and the key driver for relevancy. Are you sending an email for the administrators of the NHS? Are you sending it out to doctors and nurses? Are you sending it out to the group of porters? Are you sending it out to a whole department? Are you sending it out to a whole building? Targeting that database improves the relevancy of the communications that you're sending out. Yes, I appreciate that you do have to send out a regular campaign to absolutely everybody when it interests them for health and safety, for massive changes in the NHS, massive changes to COVID regulations, those sort of things. But there's nothing to stop you from sending smaller, more targeted, more relevant campaigns throughout the course of the week to those very, very specific sort of databases. We experience that in our lives all the time in retail. If we go shopping at Tesco's and we use our club card, we'll get emails about those products that we purchased and relevant products. If we go onto a DIY website and look at lawnmowers, we will see targeted ads about lawnmowers and relevant gardening equipment. We won't see any sort of advertising about the other 10,000 products. They will make sure that the message is very, very targeted to them. And segmentation goes a long way to starting that sort of relevancy and that sort of pattern. These are the sort of things that we like to focus on when we're talking to people who are coming on board with us, and 5 sort of must-haves for maximizing your sort of engagement. The first one is making staff feel valued, and we can do this in 2 ways. We can help staff see what they've achieved with some good news stories. Very, very powerful if they're actually involved in that good news story, highlighting some champions of a department who have gone above and beyond and taken the extra step to improve something or improve the working day of everyone. And we can personalize the email. Dear team, dear colleague is much better if it's dear Darren, dear Rachel, and you're using their personalization in the emails that you send them through. Now, you really should have the first name for everybody you're emailing them to, predominantly because it's in the email address. So it's easy enough to ascertain, and it's easy enough to extract when you're using something like Office 365. You'll have that person's contact record all in there, and it just has such a tremendous effect on maximizing engagement if you're sending out these emails directly to people. Especially if you can personalize the subject line, personalize the Johnson box, avoid you getting deleted on the phone. And inside the body of the email, start to mention their department, start to mention their names again in the copy of the email. Just all goes towards maximizing the responsiveness and the engagement of the campaign. Timing is absolutely everything. You want your email campaign to arrive well before the grapevine has told everybody about it, and even worse, well before the grapevine combined with Chinese whispers has added their own opinion on it. So if your email arrives 2 days after these two things have kicked in, you're old news, and people are looking at your opinion or your statement and your stance on a subject through tinted windows, and they've already made their opinion based on someone else's opinion, and there's nothing worse than that. So timing is absolutely crucial. You need to make sure that you're the first person in the conversation loop, not the last person. And the ways to do that is just have a look at how long it takes you to put these emails together. If you're waiting for too many resources from other places, you need to start to take a look and try and shut that down a little bit. Knowing your staff, very important, and the only way to do that is via employee survey. Ask them what they want. How many emails do they want to see? What do they want to see the emails about? Do they feel the emails are of any benefit? And staff surveys and employee surveys are the best way to achieve that information. If they feel like their opinion is being heard when it comes to the communications they're receiving, they're much more likely to engage and start to read those emails in full. Shout when you have to. Capitalization, bold, subject lines, Johnson boxes, body of the emails. When it's time to make something really important and really make it stand out, there's nothing wrong with a bit of shouting. Don't go mad, don't overuse it, because eventually it'll just become passive, along with repetitive subject lines. You need to make sure that you only use it as and when it's required. And the fifth one for me is probably the most important, and that's measure everything. You cannot maximize your engagement, and you cannot work towards improving engagement rates if you don't know what's going on. If you have no metrics on who's opening, who's clicking, who's engaging with one piece of material, who's playing the videos that you're putting onto intranets, then you're already behind the 8 ball, and you're already a bit behind the curve on maximizing what you're trying to achieve through those campaigns. Let's have a quick strategy recap. What are we looking at? We're looking at, do you know what your staff want? And if you don't, then it's time to ask a survey. Put out a survey, find out what they want to read, find out what they want to know. Are you grouping your staff effectively? That all goes back to relevancy. If you've got good grouping and good segmentation, you're going to send out much more relevant and much more targeted emails. I work with a hospitality client, and they send out emails about Wimbledon, Ascot, the FA Cup. And so they have everybody in those targeted groups. So they only send out their FA Cup emails to people who are interested in the FA Cup. It's a similar thing in internal comms. If you can make it more relevant, you can make it more targeted, you can maximize engagement. Can you measure everything? It's my absolute soapbox. If you can't see who's opening on desktop, who's opening on mobile, who's opening it at so-and-so o'clock, who's opening at on what particular day, then you're already behind. And are you the original source? You need to be in front of the grapevine, and you need to be in front of other people's Chinese whispers or other people's opinions. Let's have a quick look at some questions we can ask ourselves when we're sending out these campaigns. How many of these are we ticking? How many boxes are we ticking when we're putting these out? Is the email written for a person by a person? It's that personalization. Will the language be familiar to a recipient? In retail, we call it newsjacking. So if there's a particular phrase or hashtag going out in and around the media, you'll see retailers will jump on that and use that phrase in their campaigning. It's a similar tactic you can use in internal comms. Is the purpose of the email up front? Our webinar email is a prime example of that. We put together that webinar email and we told you exactly what we wanted you to do. We wanted you to come to this webinar. We weren't hiding anything. An old marketing manager of mine once said to me, and it stuck with me forever, is that there's no prizes for surprises. And so you're just much better being honest and upfront with those campaigns. Can it be skim read? I used to say an email should never be any longer than a piece of A4 paper if it was printed off. Now, I appreciate that's very difficult nowadays because there's a lot of information to get across. So in an ideal world, you'd be using something like an index at the top of your email where people can see what's going on in an edition of an email, and then they can click to where they want to go. That's a way to getting around that. Is it visually appealing? Plenty of images, plenty of videos. Is the email relevant to all recipients? Again, that goes back to targeting and segmentation. How important is the email? Probably not so relevant for NHS internal comms because pretty much every campaign, I should imagine, is very important. But it's always worth looking at, could this email be skipped if it's just a regurgitation of a previous email? And important, will this email capture the attention in 8 seconds? And that's relating to subject lines and Johnson boxes and from names. We have to make sure that email is instantly engaging. Is the subject line asking questions? Is it short enough to be read on a mobile without getting dotted out with the ellipsis? Is it using personal language? Is it saying this is your communication? This is all about you. This isn't about us. This is all about you. And so will that drag them in to see the rest of the email? I've got a question here. We don't have an email messaging tool, but I do use email mail merge for divisional or directorate messages, so I can that personal touch. Perfect. Absolutely. It's so important. We're magpies at the end of the day, and so when we're looking at these 100 emails in our inboxes, if we see our name, we can scoop it out, and we say, oh, okay, oh, that one's for me. That one is actually me. It goes back to that personalization, that personal language. So yeah, email mail merge is absolutely the right way to go because you've got the data. You must have the data because these people aren't just signing up via a click box. They're your employees, so name, last name, email address, department. You know all this information, so use it to your advantage when you're pulling those through. That's it from me. If there's any more questions, I'll be happy to take them now. But hopefully that was of some benefit. What we'll do is we'll send this out as a recording as well, so everybody can watch it back at their leisure or share with their colleagues. If anybody wants to know more about our service, we're trusteddelivery.co.uk. We're the only email provider in the world currently who guarantee your emails will be delivered straight to the inbox. No junk, no spoofing, no horrible yellow banner across the top. That's what we do. It's a product dedicated for the NHS. No one else can use it except you guys. So if you want to know more about that, our website is there. And if there's, I'll give a few more seconds to see if there's any questions. And please do answer our poll as well. When you come on there, it's all very interesting and informative for us. Helps us rebuild more webinars in the future, which hopefully you'll be able to attend. But yeah, that's all from me. So thank you very much for attending, and hopefully I'll speak to you all soon. Thank you very much.